Welcome to part 11, CSS Distance Units. So CSS understands many different types of units, and if you look at our code below, which is the same from the last video, you'll see that this px is in multiple places, and that stands for pixels. So the border is 2 pixels in width, the font size is 25 pixels, and again, this bottom border is also 2 pixels. But there are many different types of units besides pixels that CSS understands. So here are just some of the different types of units that you can use here instead of px. So the unit is typically a 2-character code that corresponds to some dimension over here, or some distance. So technically a single pixel is 1/96 of an inch, and that is the most common type of unit to use. PT stands for a point, or a typographical point. This is actually the distance that, or the unit that matplotlib uses in its plots. So when you say a font size of 10 or a line width of 10, it means 1/72 of an inch. So that's 1 point. So 10 points would be 10/72 of an inch. But for CSS, you have a much broader choice. CM stands for centimeter. VW stands for the percent of viewport width. So we'll talk about that, like what is the current viewport width, like the width of the parent, and viewport height. So we'll see some examples of each of these. So let's just change this font size for the paragraph, for instance. So if we change it to, instead of 25 pixels, we say 1 centimeter. So 1 centimeter is less than half of an inch. So maybe like 40 pixels, so it should be substantially larger, and it is. So you can use even decimals like 1.5 centimeters and so forth like that. Let's move it back down, maybe half a centimeter. Okay, great. Points are not typically used, so I won't try those. What is common though is this viewport width. And what we'll do for this viewport width, instead of changing the font size, we'll actually just go ahead and change the width of the entire. So by default, the width for block level elements goes from left to right, goes the entire width of the screen. So you can change this in pixels. So if we say we set this to 500 pixels, you can see that now the width of the element is less. It's 500 pixels. But a sort of a common way of doing this is not necessarily with pixels, is with this viewport width. So the viewport, say from left to right of the code block, is 100%. So if we say it will now be 80 VW, so 80% of the viewport width. So it should be about 80% of this, the width that you see. The height is going to be a little bit different here because we don't have a particular height like in the notebook. It's not, the way it renders is not how it would properly look on a web page. So I'm not going to display that, but it works in a similar fashion. You can actually use viewport width for anything. For the font size, we could say we want to be like 1% of the viewport width to be the font size. So you can think about like 1%, maybe it's somewhere around here, and that would be the font size. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like that. So this is very atypical usage, but just to show you that you can use it in different places. All right, so just to recap, CSS, there's many different types of units. You have to know the unit, and I'll have a link to the documentation so you know exactly what these units mean. And it's typically a 2-character code that you put immediately following some number.